Welcome back to the Nuggets of Gold podcast and YouTube channel. We are going to be talking about the defensive line today. Now, the 49ers defensive line is incredibly deep. We talked about Arden Key yesterday a little bit, but just getting into this, Aiden, who do you think is going to get cut? Because it seems like it's inevitable that a good player, an NFL player, multiple NFL players are going to get cut from this team. And you start looking at how deep they are. Who do you kind of have making the roster? Who are you unsure of? Who's on that bubble? But where are you at overall with this defensive line?
I think that we've talked about it before. This is a defensive line that is deeper than any I've really ever seen. It's not quite as top heavy as 2019. But I mean, when you have a guy like Maurice Hurst as your maybe fourth defensive tackle, when a lot of reports came out that he could be starting for most teams in the league, that's really, really exciting. In terms of who's going to make the roster, obviously Armstead, Ford, I think Zach Kerr, Kinlaw, Hurst, Jones, Bosa, Arden Key played really, really well yesterday, and we talked about it. I think he'll make the roster, but that puts some guys squarely on the bubble. I expected Jordan Willis to make a bigger impact than he has. He's a guy who's a physical freak, but haven't really seen anything crazy from him. I think he's on the bubble. A guy like Kevin Givens and Contavious Street, both guys who are physical like freaks, are also on the bubble, and they are solid young players. Really don't know how many guys they're going to end up keeping, which makes it hard to, I guess, choose who's going to make the roster or not. But say they try to throw Contavious Street on the practice squad. We know at least the Saints are going to take a look at picking him up after he broke Drew Brees in half last year. So, like I said, this is a really deep defensive line, and excited to see who ends up making this roster, because I think it's one of the best position groups, regardless of defensive lines, in the entire NFL.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous when you start looking at like how many. Okay, I'll go through it real quick just to kind of see like, all right, how many of these guys should make the roster. I think that you probably keep 7, maybe just maybe 8, but it's hard to expect them to keep 8 defensive linemen. Very obviously going to make the roster. Arik Armstead, Dee Ford, Javon Kinlaw, Nick Bosa. Then you have guys. Here's the other like 4 guys. See, that's the thing. This is like 4 other guys that I expect to make the roster too. Zach Kerr, Mo Hurst, DJ Jones, and Arden Key. So that would leave you with 8. And then that would leave out Kevin Givens and Jordan Willis, who were actually very big parts of the defense last year. And then Contavious Street, who's been on the team for a while now. He's looked pretty solid. But it seems like those guys, it seems like it's going to be really tough for them to make this team. So I don't really know like where it's at, because I don't know. It seems like there's too many, there's not enough roster spots. And there's a very good chance that Kevin Givens or Jordan Willis or Contavious Street, one of those 3 guys, because that's the guys I'm kind of expecting them to cut. It would make sense if they start somewhere else as soon as next year. So, or as soon as this year, I mean, for a different team. Like they might be cut and they might start, like week 4 for another team. Like that is feasible to happen. I don't know if I've ever seen a defensive line where you have guys that you're cutting that the team's almost expecting will start games for other NFL teams. And it just shows the depth of this team. We've seen how much the 49ers have prioritized this depth among the defensive line. I think one of the biggest questions heading into, this offseason was, how does Dee Ford look? Dee Ford looks healthy, and Dee Ford looks like he's going to be limited to only having to play on 3rd down because of this depth, because Arik Armstead isn't going to have to be forced to, kick inside as much, because they have Mo Hurst and DJ Jones and Zach Kerr all as very, very good rotational players there. And then you have an Arden Key and Arik Armstead and then Nick Bosa that they can all play those defensive edge positions, and they can be like in there on more rushing downs, opposed to like 3rd and long, 3rd and whatever, where that gives a chance for Dee Ford to play 15, 20 snaps a game. And we've talked about it before. He's not a guy that you look at his productivity as how many snaps he plays. You look at him as like, just get him in there on the key downs that you want him to be in there, because you see how big of a game changer he is and how big of an impact he has on those passing downs. So it just makes him that much stronger, where they're not going to have to rely on him. I mean, they're not even going to have to rely on Dee Ford as much as they did in 2019. He could probably even play less snaps than that. And that was like oh God, they just signed this guy and extended him for so much money. Like, he's not playing. They're not even going to play him as much as that, in my opinion. So it's a good spot to be in when you start looking at, like, it could have got really bad after Buckner left, and they've really covered it up, and it looks a lot better now. And of course, health is always the big thing here. But Aiden, we were even talking about this a while back. This is one of those spots too where we're only talking about the guys that we've seen, that we know, and there's very well going to be a practice squad guy that this team really likes. We talked about Griffith, Jonas Griffith at linebacker, and he was an undrafted free agent in 2020, and now he looks like he's a rosterable player. There could easily be a guy that's going to be stashed on this depth chart that could be that guy in 2022. So there's probably more talent than we're even kind of counting here. But it's really exciting. Anything else you want to bring up for this defensive line?
No, I mean, I think that we've talked about it. This is a team. This is a defensive line that's deep, that's talented, and the guy's going to get left off, and that's a good problem to have. Would rather cut somebody good than keep somebody not quite as good. I don't know specifically what the rules for trading are right now, but imagine you could flip one of these guys for like a corner. I don't think that's off the table. But I mean, obviously, lot to be figured out. And somebody is either going to get stuck on the practice squad or cut when they could be playing meaningful snaps for another squad.
I'll say, I don't even know for another squad, for like 20 other squads. That's what's crazy. Like, you don't really see that. But that's going to do it for today's segment.